So we're here, we're talking about investing, and there's a lot of ideas going around right now. Like when is it a good time? Is the market going to crash? What's going on? Well, we have a couple of things to talk about. And one of those is first off, starting off with what exactly is investing and how you can actually use it in your life. It's actually a very personal thing and it's a different answer for everybody. How would you describe that, Alan? What is the exact strategy for a person compared to another person?
Yeah, well, that's a funny one because I actually was a real estate investor many years ago. And when you say what's the exact, it really is a preference because I was doing well with the real estate investing until the market started to go sideways and then interest rates were going up. And so then the houses I bought were going down in value and I was still ahead, but then it was harder to sell those things. And you still got tenants. If you have more than one house, you're landlord at that point, and then you're going to deal with tenants, and there's all kinds of issues with that. And real estate has been the number one asset class for people to invest in, and businesses is another one. And people don't want to start a business because it's kind of complicated, and that's the beauty. That's where I stopped being a real estate investor and started looking at shares back in 2003. Because you can buy small pieces and you can sell those small pieces. It's easy. If the interest rates go up or down or whatever, something's not performing, within 30 seconds, if you want, you could be out of your thing you don't like anymore and into something else or into cash where you can just sit out the storm if there is one.
We had a
Good
good
stuff.
conversation yesterday about this exact topic about you're buying a house, it's your investment, or
Yeah.
you're classifying it in your own mind as an investment. And there's a couple problems with that when you know about other things that actually produce similar results, sometimes better, sometimes worse, like getting into the market. But there's some really big time systemic issues that we're discussing that was really interesting. And one is that you can't just get in or out of a house very quickly.
No.
There's other people that have to be involved. So what's your perspective on that one?
Yeah, and that was one of the best investment ideas for centuries was to, buy your own home. That was the American dream and such. But there's been some big changes with that, and it has a lot to do with the upcoming millennial generation. These people are not buying houses. The whole idea where people thought, well, you just buy a house, you buy a second house, and then what happens is, you sell that off and you live off of the money you earned, or if you got a second home, you rent that out, and that's still a viable plan. But the governments have actually changed their idea about that. They're looking at, and this is true in like in some parts of Canada, where they're looking at that second home and going, hey, you got a lot of money, Mr. Taxpayer. We're going to tax you a little heavier on that, and we're going to charge you higher property taxes, and well, you don't get to get this deduction that your parents had. You are now going to be paying a bigger bill. They're basically reaching into these people that are retiring's pockets, and there's a bit of uproar with that. Well, that uproar doesn't help anybody. It's just the way it is. The government's handing it down to you, saying, this is how it is. We're going to take some more of your money. And that's the problem with real estate, is fixed on the land. You can't just walk out of there and say, well, I'm done. Whereas, I moved. I got out of one country and I'm now portable. I can live wherever I want. If I still had a house up there, I'd need a property manager, to make sure the place isn't being damaged and all that. But getting back to the point is, if millennials aren't buying houses, they're renting, and they're going to be more portable, the digital age. They're going to be moving to Thailand or Mexico or wherever they move, where rent is cheaper. But what does that do for the demand on housing? And Japan has already seen that, where they're seeing drops in their house pricing because the buyers aren't there anymore. And this trend has been going on now for a bunch of years. It's not new. And it's coming to the United States and Canada and Europe. A lot of people in Europe don't own a home, but they have, different thing. And just to keep it simple, is the old model of buy a house, sell it, and then live off of the sale of that, or buy two houses, sell one or rent one and live in the other. That model isn't going to work as well when there's no demand for houses. It's going to go down and down. Rent is going to get cheaper. The house is not worth as much. You're not going to get as much for selling or renting out that other house or that primary house. It's a problem, and it's already underway, and you can see it happening in Japan if you look at some of the data for that. And it's coming to America because you look at millennials. These people aren't saving and buying houses. They want a lifestyle. They want to enjoy their experiences in life. And some of them are frugal savers, but a lot of them aren't. And some of them are paying heavy loans for school. So they're behind the eight ball. They can't even begin to save for a house, a bunch of them. And the ones that are making good money, some of them are, like you look at San Francisco Bay Area, they're making the low paying job is $110,000. That's the low paying job.
Yeah.
And they pay heavy rent. They can't afford to buy a house. Some of them do. And they do what they can. But those kind of people, if they could actually leave their location, and of course the world is getting more fluid like that, they go, well, I'm still me. I'll still do the work. Hey, boss, do you mind if I move over to some other part of the world? They're going to be like, yeah, so long as you keep the work up. And so what happens? Well, the demand for rent and real estate changes because this digital age is only getting stronger. Video conferencing in India was an impossible dream. Well, do you want to live in India? Well, I know a couple people that, yeah, I'd like to go back and live with their family. And it's like, okay, can they do their work there now? Yes, they can. They're still a valued employee. So if the world is more fluid, that means I don't need to buy a house. So real estate is not as hot an asset as other things. Well, what are the other things? Well, owning shares for a short or long period of time, you get in, you get out, it works. And some of the people that became millionaires at Microsoft were because they were owning shares, and then they traded those shares. So it wasn't that started in the 90s. So it's not like it's new. It's just new for some people to find out that the world has already changed and more changes are coming.
Yeah, and you bring up a really massively important point, which is the underlying things that made real estate a good investment at one particular time. Well, that's actually changed. And the rules of how things are governed and taxed, those are in the process of being changed as well. So the two main things, the main catalysts for real estate specifically being a good investment are changing. Now, we don't know what the impact is going to be specifically. We just know that if they trend in this direction or that direction, generally speaking, it's going to affect supply and demand in those ways, and it will actually affect the quality of that investment. So that was a really good point. And so in this age of the virtual nomad type of stuff where people can actually do what they're wanting to do all around the world and be mobile, essentially have a backpack and just kind of rent a room wherever they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to have implications across the board big time. And like you say, if they're not investing into the traditional systems, what's going to happen to those traditional systems?
Yeah, and that's the idea, is that, smart people are going to still say, well, I want my money to work for me. So how do I put it to work for me where I'm floating around? Well, you can get a chart and you can get an email. Yeah. You can be all that kind of stuff, and you can say, well, okay, I'll just sign into my brokerage account, and I'll put a sell order in for that, and I'll put a buy order for this other thing, and you can watch your money working for you, your account growing while you're out doing whatever you're doing. And one of my favorite books is a guy named Nicholas Darvis, and he was a dancer. And he was a really good dancer, and so he would actually go to different parts of the world. This is in the 60s, 1950s and 60s. You can imagine there was no internet, there was no computers, there was no nothing. But he had somebody that would send him stock prices. And so here's like probably the first digital nomad before their digital was. So he would get these stock prices sent to him while he was out doing his dancing. And he was a swing trading investing kind of guy, and he did really well. And he talks about it in his book. And the point is, what's he doing? He's running around the world doing what he loves. He's making way more money on that, and he gives it very little attention. But he had a system that he has, and that's it. And he didn't have, renters and houses and all that. And there's some other, famous billionaires like Peter Schiff. He says, I will not own a house. Well, why would you do that? He says, well, I can make way more money if I rent a house wherever I am. I can go wherever I want. And my money's making more money than whatever. So they ask him the usual question. It's like, yeah, but, you want to hang a picture on the wall and all that kind of stuff. And he's looking at that like, well, is that really worth $10,000 a month to say that that's my picture on that wall? No. He says, I'd rather just, go get a different hotel or a different place to live. I'm paraphrasing what he says, but that the notion is like you change the room. You don't even need to change the picture, just change the room and keep making more and more money. Because there's that compounded money, even though there's a drain called rent, is earning more than he would if he had a house and he sold the house. And then, with the house, you have upkeep and all that, but this digital world just keeps expanding. You're getting more and more access to all the things that you want fluidly anywhere in the world. Like you want to watch a movie. Oh, there's Netflix. Okay, so there's Netflix. Well, what else do you want to do? Well, I want to go talk to my grandson and he's over in this other part of the world. Great. Get him on a video call. Get on a plane. Go visit him. Hang out with him for a month. We have so many choices.
Yeah.
And
I
they
love
keep
that
expanding.
story. I love that story that you just told. It was Darvis, right?
Yeah.
And it really highlights the personalization nature of investing and how the right answer for one person is not the right answer for the other, even though both systems can work. So what's the perfect answer? What's going to depend on who and where you are. And another thing that's not really talked about that often is we're talking about showing up to the party with what you need, but there's also there's a pre-party that has to go on where you actually have to create the conditions to where you can do those things. So bringing in income first, saving it up, and then starting to educate yourself, or in our case, just follow some simple signals. But what is the personalization factor, and how can people prepare for that next step where they're starting to invest and starting to really focus on their future?
Yeah, I don't take it for granted what I learned and how I learned it. And it was, the slow road compared to what's available now. And there's a lot of words, and it's easy to get swayed by somebody that sounds like they're an expert. And do they actually know what they're doing? And do they give you their best stuff? Or do they actually really care about you? That's the number one. Or are they just trying to sell you something that's really not tested? These are the problems that will continue to be around forever, so long as, because there's always somebody that wants to sell you something to get your money. And that's different than, well, this works, and here's a whole bunch of people that say it works. And that's where, in a community like that, that's where you would talk to people that, an online community. So, you can be in your pajamas and you can talk to them and, keep the camera off, but you just talk to people in a forum, or you read a web page or a blog and you say, well, what are the things I can do? Well, there's this style or that style, and there's not that many styles when you get down to stuff that works and is repeatable. It's cookie cutter. It's like, how do you bake a cake? Well, you can buy the ingredients and make it scratch, or you buy a prepackaged mix and you just stir it up, or you go down the store and you buy a cake. It's really, that's all there is. There's not like, millions of combinations and study for years like the Wall Street guys try to make it seem like. If they were so great, how come they're not doing so well? Yeah, it's one of those weird questions, because they are always selling because their best income is from commissions. That's how it is. And there's a book about that. There's I think it's called What Works on Wall Street by O'Shaughnessy. You don't need to read that book. I studied it. It's in that plus 200 other books. The point is, they generally make their money on Wall Street from investing your money, and they get a management fee. And it can be a pretty heavy management fee. You don't have to. If you want a really simple strategy, go look at a stock code called QQQ. And it's an index of technology and emerging stocks. And let's say you just bought that 10 years ago. Well, how's it doing now? And you don't do anything. You really absolutely do nothing except buy and hold that. Well, that works pretty good. Well, how hard is it to figure out how to buy that? Well, you can go to your bank and you go say, hey, I want to open a stock account. Well, they'll try to sell you, guess what? Some exchange traded fund, mutual fund, or all that kind of stuff where there's a management fee in there for them. And it does pretty well what the market does on average. So it's not like it does better. It may do worse, but it won't generally do much better than the market because there's these fees built into it. Anyways, if all you do is buy that one item, just that one, and you buy it at a right time, like you'd use the signal to say, well, I'm not buying it yet. I'm going to wait for, the signal to say, hey, I want to buy it when it's finished falling and the opportunity is now good again. That's that red or green kind of signal. You'd buy it when the green signal finally comes on again. That's it. And you just hold that and you don't do anything else. That's the simplest strategy there is. And so, yeah, go to the bank, say, I want to buy some of that, throw them some money. They open a brokerage account. You sign a bunch of papers, and then you walk away. And if you want it to do better, like in 2007, 2008, there was a crash. Well, what do? You go look for that red signal that says, hey, you should go to cash on that thing, sell it, and then buy it back when the green signal is back on. You will outperform just holding it. So holding it's good, but so maybe once or twice a year, you have to take an action called, oh, I got to sell that. And then I'm going to wait for it to turn green again, and I'm going to go buy it again. Well, you can do that with an online broker account, and that's really simple. If you can balance or, even look at your online bank account, then you have all the skills you need to be a stock trader. It sounds like a fancy title, but it's only because we're unfamiliar. If you're familiar with it, all of a sudden, oh yeah, that. It's like when people say, well, do you have iTunes? Oh, I don't know, what's iTunes? And then it's like, oh, well, I've got, Spotify and this and that. And all of a sudden that's just easy, obvious. And it's like, well, Spotify, what's that? It's always the new thing. That's always the challenge. It's like, what's that? Well, if you know that millions of people have been through that door before, and it's fairly simple because, they expect millions of people are going to keep coming through the door. Of course, they've simplified it fairly well. So to be an investor where you manage your own account, you go ask somebody that has one. The odds are that you know somebody that hey, do you do online investing? If they say yes, you say, great, can you show me how? And they'll tell you, oh, it's easy. You just blah, 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 blah. Which bank are you at? Or, you should use Interactive Brokers or, this broker, that broker. And so how do you do it? Well, you just send them some money from your bank account, and then you fill out some papers. So this mystery is only because you don't use it. It's exactly like Spotify. Oh, well, what do? Well, you type a couple things in here and you click a couple things and then you start listening to the music that you like. Really? Yeah. It's like that.
Yeah, and the whole idea with where we are now as opposed to where we were in the past, we've got the internet now, so we have access. There's always this discussion around, oh, things are so different now than they were before, and partially that's correct, but also there's something else that a lot of times is not accounted for, and what that is access to information. Like, for example, if we're going back, well, let's just say 20, 30 years, you're pretty much limited to what you hear on the television or what you read in the newspaper, and a lot of time that's mostly focused on local news. So you're not getting the report from China. You're not getting the report from the state next to you where there was a plane crash or whatever. Some stock goes up. If it doesn't make the headlines, then you're not even having access to that. So we have such a significant opportunity now to be an investor for the long run, as you say, the QQQ, taking advantage of really the best tech out there. And that's always going to be changing, especially in this new era where it seems every 3 months there's some technology that's going to change the world, and money shifts really quickly because it is so easy. Like you say, you want to learn how to invest and trade? Well, open up a broker account, learn how to make an order, a buy order, and then learn how to sell it. You buy it when you want it, you sell it when you want it, and it takes not very long. Now, the other things that you were mentioning, like a mutual fund or some of the tax benefit type of things like IRAs and things like that, that's going to actually take some time, kind of like a house. There's a period of time where you decide you want to sell, you click the button, but you actually have to wait for the restrictions to pass, and then you sell your position. So I like what you said earlier. You know what? If you just put it in the QQQ, it's instantaneous as long as someone buys your order from you. That's a really cool idea, and it's really liquid because there's so much money there. We were speaking earlier about the personalization of investment. Well, this is a great plan. If things go south, you don't have to wait till that Friday's close. You can get out right now.
Right now, within minutes. And the market is open 6.5 hours a day, 9:30 New York till 4 p.m. New York time. And you can get out of that easily, quickly, in any time during that part of the day. Or you can put in an order in advance, and if your sell price is what people want to pay, you're out. That's actually how it works. It's like it's better, faster than eBay.
Yeah.
And I think eBay is easy. The brokerage account is easier once you know where to click. Well, I just go in here and you click. Yeah, that's it. And some of them are making it super easy, like the TD Ameritrade, Thinkorswim. That trading platform is pretty easy. They make it, they got online support and all that kind of stuff. But there's so many different brokers out there. You just pick one of the top 5. I like Interactive Brokers because the commissions are super low, and they're huge. And but they'll answer the phone, and like at any hour of the day, because they got offices in Hong Kong and wherever. So if you have a technical question about, well, how do I blah blah blah, just call them up. It's a local call to you, and some guy, depending on the hour of the day, will answer your phone and tell you what you need to do. Oh, it's over here. You click on that. Oh, okay.
And my favorite part about this whole thing is one of my life goals is to not really need a computer, but to be totally mobile and have everything run from a cell phone. And what we're talking about is extremely easy. Everything's going mobile, it seems, right now. And so you could actually, well, here's a caveat to that. If you have the right information, buying and selling is actually really easy, and you can do it from your cell phone sitting on some weird beach with a signal.
Yep. And that's where we've, recreated in a better way what Darvis's success was. I mean, he made couple $1 million back in the 60s. You can imagine the buying power that had. And he didn't start out with 5 million and ended up with 2. He started out with like not much, but he had a system. He just followed the system. So how hard is that? You just have a system, and you don't actually have to figure out the system, which is what he did. Part of it he stumbled into. So I started trading commodities that would be like oil and gold, and it's just a different trading environment back in 1986. Well, I had to have a computer with a modem, and I dialed up, and then you download the price data, and you pay fees for all that kind of stuff. And I didn't even know what I was doing, but I just thought, well, I got to try. So I started out with a small account, and it didn't work out so well because I didn't know what I was doing, and nobody was there to teach me. That's a long time ago. And if somebody did have a good system, they'd keep it to themselves, which is mostly how the world is still these days. Um, but we're not that way. We actually want to see people succeed. And I know there's people that have complaints and problems with us being that way, and like, well, you can't do that. Yeah, I can. I'm still free. I'm still alive,
Yeah,
and I
they
want
don't
to.
believe it.
Yeah, they don't believe it because, well, of course they don't. Because most people that sell stuff, they're selling stuff that hasn't been tested, and they just want to get the check out of you for selling you their idea, which is most of the time just a rehash of somebody else's idea. So my bottom line point is, if you like this QQQ idea, which I shared freely with people in 2005, so go look up the price for that, and maybe we can put a chart somewhere for that. But it's freely available with Yahoo Finance. It's like, give me a 20-year chart. Just look at what's going on with that, and it's going to keep going. And yes, it has a dip. So if you like that idea, which is a really easy, good idea, and it's better than what the Dow does, it outperforms the market. If you like that idea, well, then imagine what happens if you just take the green-red signal system and say, well, apply that to the Q. So you're only trading one thing. That's it. Well, I'm getting all out of Q. Okay, great. Now I'm getting all in back to Q. Okay, good. That's it. It's just using the green-red.
Yeah.
And it improves the results.
Yeah, and when you're talking about doing that, and it is a successful system, and you can test it and all that stuff. There's a difference between a broker. So think of a broker as, they're going to give you, think about how the broker makes money. That's the first thing. They make money off of you trading. They make commissions off of you trading. They don't really care about you making money or losing money, because that's not what they care about. They want to give you as many tools as possible to just trade. That's different than what we do. We have a whole different setup, and that's why it's so important that you have the right information, so you actually can trade in a successful system that has been tested. And that's the difference. Like what you were just saying hit home to me, because you said, well, I had no one to teach me. Well, fortunately for me, I had you to teach me. So I got to learn from all of your successes and failures, and adapt my behavior to now a very simple system that works. And I'm not handcuffed. Yep, handcuffed to the broker and what they provide. Because remember, like it took me a long time. I read a couple books, not anywhere near 200. I maybe, like, we're talking about 2 or 3 on specific topics, and I thought they were pretty cool, so I went out and tested them. Oh, really? So that was great and everything, but that's like walking into a pitch black room where there's 20 people, and you've got to tag the right one.
Yeah.
You can't see anything.
Yeah,
So,
I'm laughing because I know exactly where you would end up with taking somebody else's good idea that's in, one of 3 books, or, all 3 books. And then you found out the same thing I found out, which is it didn't work that well.
yeah.
And well, then how can a guy write a book if it doesn't work that well?
Yeah, and you're talking about years. We're not talking about, oh, it didn't work really well in one day, 1 week, 1 month. It takes years to figure out that it doesn't work. And by then, what's the damage?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why there's the common belief that nobody's got it and it doesn't work and what they have is garbage, because up till now, that's really how it is. And if they did have something good, they wouldn't share it with you. Well, of course, because they're greedy and they want the edge for themselves, because 10 Ferraris is better than 5, which is not at all how you and I think. We're minimalists, just because it's about, I don't need all that. I'm happy with or without all the stuff, which is a different core value than, the generations generally before us. They were, and it's true, they were in survival because that's just, there was scarcity. They didn't, we live in an era where robots are now helping to grow and collect agriculture. Yeah. So they're doing it because they can't find enough, reliable employees. But this is where robots, I'm going to call them generally, is it's automation. And I used to be in that industry, so I actually know how to make those things. Is where a camera scans something that flies by, and in a fraction of a second, it assesses what's going on, and then that is part of the sorting mechanism for groceries. So there's actually in California machinery going in place where some of the process is being, the humans are being moved out of the process because the automation does a better job, and it always shows up for work. It's not, I don't feel like it, or I'm sick, or, don't like you, boss, or whatever it is. It's like the machinery is always there. So the point is, we're in an era where a lot of things are changing, and the human factor, like what you get to do you get to have a job, is changing. And that's the inevitable. It's been going that way for the Industrial Revolution started that. So we've been on this path where it's expanding more and more, where people don't have jobs pretty soon because you've got machinery. Well, why would people do that? Well, because you're talking about corporations and their bottom line is profit. So if you think that jobs are going to be around forever, some will, some have changed, but some jobs are disappearing permanently.
Yeah, that's a really important thing to when we're talking about the idea of investing, we're talking about getting in at the right time, and that it's not just limited to putting your money in things. It's actually your education, where you place yourself, where you decide to focus your attention on those things. Like, well, if you want to go be a coal miner, well, that may work out really well in the short run, depending on where you are and all that thing. But is that a good thing to spend your time doing and learning about when we're in the era of technology taking over those type of jobs? So
yeah, trading markets are going to be around forever. It's just,
right.
What is the trading market? And you don't have to drive yourself nuts, with, the high speed, all that stuff, and competing with all that. That's where investing is really easy if you just pick the right sector and you just say, oh, well, that thing is doing well and that one's not. So, for example, I know a fellow that he's studying biochemistry. And so I asked him the question, so how are the jobs there? And he says, well, there's too many biochemists and not enough jobs. He says, well, listen, you're smart enough, you could be a programmer. There's still lots of programming jobs, and I'll teach you some, but mostly you can get all that online. And there's actually jobs waiting for you when you're done with your learning. And so what he doesn't know is the next thing I would suggest to him is, because it's my path, is like, well, get out of programming, keep it, but start doing trading, because the markets are always up and down. They're not flat, they're up and down. Well, if you have the knowledge to say, well, this is a decent time, not the perfect time, there's no such thing, but a decent time to get into this thing, whatever time frame you're dealing with, whatever market you're dealing with, but this looks good and stable and it's tested. I just have to follow a system, like, Darvis the dancer guy. He just followed his system. He didn't make money on everything. He didn't get the squeeze every penny out of stuff, but he retired early as a multimillionaire. What's the problem with that? Well, if you're greedy, it's never enough. Well, fine, that's your problem. But if you're like most people, it's like, hey, all I want is just a nice standard of living. I just want to have get out of the survival mode where I have to work every day, where I could just, do some trades and I'm lifting myself out. And so, I know a fellow, he invested in one stock, and he did really well by that. And he didn't invest his whole fortune, but he turned, 20,000 into $500,000 in a period of a couple of years. And that's a real story, and those stories happen. So, well, why not me? Well, if you're not playing the game, if you haven't learned anything and you just think, well, this is all nonsense and it doesn't exist, well, okay, great. Then you're right, and it's nonsense and doesn't exist in your world. But we also know that there's all kinds of people out there that I used to drive around neighborhoods and look at, these really high-end, beautiful homes and look at them and go, somebody lives in that house. Like, I don't know what they did, but there's people living in that house. And so I did that to stir my brain from, any negativity I had, to go, well, it is not just possible, it is happening. So that's where I switched up from real estate investing to the stock, because it's like, well, real estate's pretty good, but when the market is flat or going down because interest rates, I'm screwed. And if I have a bad tenant, that'll cost me much more than 2 years worth of rent. I have to go repair all the damage from them going crazy. And it's like, I've never seen anybody sell slip and fall insurance for a stock. You need that for, you got an icy sidewalk, some guy slips and falls in front of your house, there's an insurance claim. You have to have insurance for that. Oh, well, somebody slipped and fell on some shares of Apple today. Never happens. So it's like, that got me seriously thinking. I never have tenants. No, I have different problems, but they're actually easier problems. So, and I can get in and out quickly. Oh, I see. So I should learn about this. So I went to a night school class, and there was a guy there, and he's a good friend for me all this time. And he was talking about something completely crazy. He was talking about trading. And I said, I just wanted to find better mutual funds that were low cost. And there was that one course, but it was full. So I ended up in this guy's course. And it changed my life. I was a way better direction than what I was doing. And he was also a past president of the Real Estate Investment Club. And he's teaching people how to buy and sell commodities or stocks. What does that tell you?
Mm-hmm.
And I used to be a speaker at a real estate investment club where I would, give people tips, and, I helped a few people make a few $1 million in the course of 20 years. But the point was, this is easier. It takes less training and takes less money. You can start with, a $5,000 account. So it's not fast. Well, it's still good. It's better than, keep working for all the money that because your money's working for you. It's not just you always pulling the wagon. It's like, yeah, well, if I just save a bit, stick it in the right thing, like the Q for the most basic, easy example, and you don't have to believe me. You can just go look at the chart and go, yeah, that actually works. Uh-huh. We'll compare that to the Dow. Yeah, well, see, that's what I did back in 2003. It says, well, what's a really easy strategy? And because, I was a top-end programmer, and I collected the data and I did all that analysis. Yeah, I'm the same guy that would tear apart 200 books to say, well, where's the truth, and test all that. So the Q is the easiest thing. It's like, just, you don't have to know anything. Just go buy that and hang on to it. And I'll see you at retirement.
Yeah, there's so much information saturation going on out. It's really difficult it's like, if you have a toothache, you're going to go to the car store. You're going to go to, what are you doing? Talk to the experts and really consider why they're telling you what they're telling you. And what you're saying right there, we're in a new era. You can do all these things, but there's another problem with that. There's so much information and so many people claiming the throne, essentially, like, I have the greatest idea ever. Well, there's a massive limitation there, and it's because they're human. Here's a better approach. Don't listen to any humans. Look at the data, see if it works, and test it, and then come up with your strategy for the long run as it pertains to your general situation, whether you have $1,000 to start with or 100 million. And that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks again for listening, guys. And we'll come back with more detailed stuff later in the future on different topics across the board, everything from day trading to investing, stock trading, crypto trading, and just some general awareness type of stuff. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.